First at 5. From the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communications, you're watching WUFT News.
Welcome to WUFT News First at 5. I'm Amy Galo.
And I'm Emily Palazzotto. Thanks for joining us. Election season arrives in Florida. From the U.S. Senate race, the governor's race, on down to the race for Gainesville mayor. The midterm brings a long ballot with high stakes. Those ballots reached hands today with the start of early voting. WUFT's Camila Pereira reports.
It's the first day of early voting in Alachua County, and polling locations are open for people to cast in their ballots. 7 early voting locations opened across the county in Gainesville, Hawthorne, Alachua, and Newberry. Early voters have until November 5th to cast their ballots before Election Day. Early voters can cast their ballots up until November 6th at the County Supervisor of Elections office. The office's communications director, Aaron Klein, says registered voters can vote at any of the polling places.
Voters don't have to fear about not really finding a location that suits them because, again, it's not like on Election Day you can choose any of those locations to vote.
Klein urges people to vote early to avoid the stress of voting on Election Day. Early voting polls run from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day. And Klein tells me the voting locations have everything ready for people to come in and vote. In Alachua County, Camila Pereira, WUFT News.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Democratic challenger Charlie Crist will face off tonight in what could be Crist's last chance to tip the election in his favor. The debate, which was delayed from earlier this month by Hurricane Ian, is the first and only time the two candidates will meet on stage. After holding the office as a Republican from 2007 to 2011, this election is Crist's last chance to reclaim the gubernatorial seat, this time as a Democrat. The forum marks the first time DeSantis will debate since facing off against Andrew Gillum in 2018. It'll take place in Fort Pierce at 7 p.m.
And here in Gainesville, tomorrow's mayoral debate between candidates Ed Bilarski and Harvey Ward is officially sold out. The debate will take place tomorrow from 7 to 8 p.m. at the UF Levin College of Law. You could live stream the debate online or listen to WUFT FM. It will be moderated by WUFT's Heather Van Blockland. Gainesville Sun and WUFT News journalists will pose questions to the candidates. Tonight, you could still submit possible questions to be asked. Just email GainesvilleVoice@gmail.com.
A developing story, more fallout from the selection of Ben Sasse as the sole finalist to be the next president of the University of Florida. We have updates from the administration, faculty, and students after his introductory visit drew a loud protest. That was the scene inside Emerson Hall when protesters disrupted the final session and it was forced to shift online. UF says it will not allow a repeat when Sasse comes to appear before the Board of Trustees. Current President Kent Fox sent an email today announcing UF will start enforcing an old regulation that no protests are allowed inside buildings. Students could get into trouble with police or the Student Code of Conduct. The Faculty Senate will meet this Thursday to vote on a resolution of no confidence in the process or result this time, which was conducted with more secrecy under a new state law. The Board of Trustees is scheduled to meet at Emerson Hall on November 1st to interview Sasse. Some student groups are planning to target the meeting and the student member of the trustees. They've reportedly chosen a Halloween theme for their game plan, Spook Sasse Out of Our Swamp. I noticed it's gotten a little warmer in the past few days, which I'm very excited about.
Maybe it's the New Yorker in me, but I don't mind the cold too much. I feel like the seasons are nice. But either way, why don't we take a look with Mariana Larsen to see what tonight's weather is going to look like.
Yeah, here in Alachua County, it is feeling very warm, very Florida of us, but later on tonight, we are going to see some of those cooler temperatures. Now, we're going to have lows in the mid-50s tonight, so it's not going to feel as cool as it did last week, but it's still going to be pretty cool for us. Now, we are also expecting to see some patchy fog in the area, so if you're driving early in the morning, just keep an eye out for that. Back to you.
President Biden will have a rally in South Florida for Democratic Party candidates on November 1st. Named Get Out the Vote, the rally comes just 1 week before Election Day. The rally is separate from the previously announced Biden stop in Fort Lauderdale. There, he will participate in a fundraising reception for Democratic gubernatorial candidate Charlie Crist. This will be Biden's third visit to Florida since his presidency began, falling relatively late in the campaign season. Floridians began voting by mail in late September, and in-person early voting began today.
It wasn't just Florida that started early voting today. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
It's opening day for early voting in Texas, South Carolina, and Florida. And with 15 days to the midterms, voters are ready to go.
We need to get the vote out, get some changes made.
A new NBC News poll finds 70% of registered voters are highly interested in this election, a record for this point before the midterms. Republican and rural voters appear to be the most motivated, and their advantage is growing with economic concerns top of mind.
Can I get a job? Can I pay for my home? Can I pay my rent?
Threats to democracy also a major motivator. That issue leans Democrat.
As important as those table issues are, without democracy, none of that counts.
Candidates for Florida governor square off in their only debate tonight, with Democrat Charlie Crist trying to make up the gap against Republican incumbent Ron DeSantis. And in Nevada, one race that could decide which party controls the Senate.
I know what this fight is about.
Democratic incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto trails Republican challenger Adam Laxalt by a narrow margin.
Every single area of regular life for working class Nevadans is heading the wrong direction.
President Biden trying to help Democrats make up ground, touting his party's accomplishments at a Democratic National Committee event today.
We created, with your help, 10 million new jobs so far.
Democrats trying to keep their advantage in two more critical Senate races in Georgia and Pennsylvania, where a closely watched debate tomorrow night could make or break that race. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Coming up, the United Kingdom selects its new prime minister.
We also have the latest details from authorities on the school shooting earlier this morning in St. Louis. Over 5 people are injured and at least 2 students are dead.
You're watching WUFT-TV News.
Police in St. Louis say a gunman opened fire at one of the city's high schools. 3 people, including the gunman, are dead. At least 6 others were wounded. NBC's Dan Sheneman has more on the country's latest school shooting.
Just after 9 a.m., the first reports of an active shooter at a South St. Louis high school.
The teacher, she crawled over and she was asking for help to move the lockers to the door so they can't get in. And we started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door.
Just minutes after the initial call, police arrived at the scene and ran toward the gunfire.
Located the shooter and engaged that shooter in exchange of gunfire. The suspect was struck and transported from this location, and that suspect has since been pronounced deceased.
Multiple victims were taken to a nearby hospital. In addition to the shooter, at least 2 others were killed. Not far from the school, anxious parents and students were reunited.
I'm heartbroken for these families who send their children to our schools hoping that they will be safe. Our children shouldn't have to experience this.
Investigators say the school's doors were locked and praised the school security staff. Police insist the threat is over. Its impact is not.
Everyone who survived here is going to take home trauma. Even the officers who responded here and the firefighters and the paramedics who worked on people here are going to experience some degree of trauma.
The shooting remains an active investigation. Dan Sheneman, NBC News.
Accused Michigan school shooter Ethan Crumbley pleads guilty to all charges against him. Crumbley opened fire at the Oxford, Michigan high school last November, killing 4 students and injuring 7 others. Today, he pled guilty to 24 felony charges, including first-degree murder and terrorism. At the hearing, Crumbley said the gun he used was purchased by his father. Now, both his dad and mom face charges related to providing access to the weapon and not providing timely mental health care after becoming aware of warning signs. Crumbley could face life in prison when sentenced in a few months.
One note of international news, the UK selects a new prime minister. Former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak will take over the ruling Conservative Party. He will be the first ever British Asian to assume the duties of prime minister. His victory was confirmed this morning, and he'll assume the post tomorrow after meeting with the king. Sunak will take over the leadership of a country in political and economic turmoil, which led Boris Johnson and Liz Truss to resign within the last 7 weeks.
And we're going to have some changes over here in the weather.
Absolutely. WUFT's Mariana Larsen has more on what's going to be different. Mariana?
A cold front this Wednesday, but it's going to look a little different than the one we saw last week. I'll tell you everything you need to know when we get back from the break.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
Welcome back. The Florida Department of Transportation and its partners are celebrating Mobility Week by highlighting public transportation options in the state.
In Ocala, SunTran employees appreciate riders in a special way. WUFT's Jameshia Carroll shows us what the city is doing to get community members moving around on public transportation.
SunTran is the way Ocala native Clarissa Williams moves around the city.
I've been riding SunTran from the day it started, over 20 years.
This week, SunTran riders have the opportunity to receive gifts and learn more about how public transportation works for them. Riders like Clarissa love the convenience and comfort of the bus.
There are people that have cars that still ride.
Saving resources like time, money, and energy is what attracts Clarissa and her friends.
No, I've had a car, but not lately, and I take the bus almost every day.
John Melick has been traveling to Ocala for more than 5 decades.
I've been coming here 51 years on and off, and I've been riding the buses since they started the bus line.
If it weren't for the line, he'd have no other way to reach places that are essential for him.
They go in some streets that are not accessible, hard to get to, and they do go, and if you are stuck and call, they'll even go out of their way a couple blocks to pick you up.
SunTran Marketing and Communication Manager Ashley Dobbs says it's easy to go the extra mile to make their riders' lives easier. She says she understands that for many, it's all about cutting costs.
It's a really cost-effective way to get around town. It's a very convenient way to get around town, and at the end of the day, we just want people to at least experience it once.
And for Clarissa and her friends, the service is meaningful.
It's just a beautiful experience.
The only thing she wishes is that she could ride on Sunday too. Jameshia Carroll, WUFT News.
The American Cancer Society puts on an annual 5K walk to support breast cancer research. Hundreds of people participated in the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer of Gainesville Walk on Saturday. The event aims to raise money for research and support cancer patients and survivors. The American Cancer Society has donated $3.7 million to UF Health Shands for research. Transportation and lodging grants are provided to support patients and their families. Breast cancer survivor Fitz Kohler served as the chair and host of this year's event.
You know, I think there's a lot of camaraderie that goes a long way. You know, when we line the survivors up and they get to just be together, it's nice to know you're not alone.
If you missed the walk, you can still get involved by donating to the cause on the American Cancer Society's website. And Emily, we had some beautiful weather this past weekend for that walk.
Absolutely, and today might even be a little bit warmer. Let's go to Mariana Larsen to find out what's in store for the rest of the week.
Taking a look outside of our studio right now, it is looking beautiful and blue out there. Now, this isn't the Sunset Prediction Center, but I can tell it is going to be one beautiful evening. So if you see the sun's going down, stick your head out the window and take a look and enjoy it. Looking at our current temperatures here in north central Florida, it is feeling nice and warm across the board. We're seeing 70s and 80s, and you could just tell it's a little bit warmer than it was for the past few days. Take a look at this. It is 3 degrees warmer than it was 24 hours ago here in Gainesville, so we are definitely feeling that. but later on tonight, it is not going to feel so warm. We are seeing lows in the mid-50s for tonight, so it's going to feel a little cool, definitely not as cool as it was last week, but still you might want to hang on to an extra blanket. And there is a chance for some patchy fog in the area, so just keep an eye on that if you're driving early in the morning. Tomorrow we are going to see similar weather than we did today, sunny, and there are going to be some clouds in the afternoon, but overall it is going to be nice and warm outside. Here are the highs for tomorrow, 80s across the board, but the real story is going to be on Wednesday. Now we are getting a cold front, and it is going to bring a slight chances for some showers and some clouds. Take a look right here. You can see that band of just clouds and rain that is going to be popping into our area, but don't worry, by Thursday it is going to clear out for the most part. Now, even though we have that cold front coming in, we aren't going to see much change in our temperatures. We're seeing 80s all across the board all week long with some sunny skies towards the weekend. Back to you.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
Welcome to sports. I'm Chris Will. Gator football prepares for a Saturday date with the #1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Both the Gators and the Bulldogs had last week off, and Georgia remains undefeated on the season. The Bulldogs have outscored their opponents by a total of 228 points. That's an average margin of victory of over 30 points per game. Florida enters the game with a 4-3 record, fresh off a loss to the LSU Tigers. Florida Gators head football coach Billy Napier says his team is well aware of the history and importance of this weekend.
Most everybody understands the things that come with this game. You know, I grew up in the state of Georgia, grew up watching this game. Our players are well aware, right? We've got a good percentage, that have played in this game, and we got another percentage that grew up watching the game, right? So we all understand the history and tradition behind this game.
Kickoff for the annual matchup in Jacksonville is set for 3:30. Georgia opens as a 22.5-point favorite. And the Georgia Bulldogs are just one of many SEC teams getting recognition on the national scale. After an unranked LSU beat down on unbeaten and former #7 Ole Miss 45-20, the conference now has 7 teams in the AP Top 25 poll. Taking a look at the full rankings, the Georgia Bulldogs remain at #1 with the Tennessee Volunteers not too far behind at #3, and the Alabama Crimson Tide are just outside of the top 4 looking in as they sit at #6. Further down the rankings, Ole Miss slides to 15 with LSU rising to 18. Kentucky is now 19 and South Carolina rounds up the top 25 at 25. The current rankings mean Florida will play or has played 6 teams in the top 25. Mississippi State and Arkansas are also receiving votes. And the World Series matchup is set as Major League Baseball moves to its final series of the season. Now, both the Phillies and the Astros will get a bit of a break before the series starts, while times are still TBD. Game 1 is set for Friday in Houston. The series will then turn to Philadelphia for Game 3 on Halloween, and the MLB postseason will return to November with Game 4 on the 1st. That's your look at sports. I'm Chris Will.
Before we go, let's get one last check on the weather.
Now, if I had to guess Mother Nature's favorite number, I would say it's somewhere in the 80s, because take a look at my 6-day forecast. 80s all week long. Now, even though we're getting a cold front on Wednesday, that is not going to affect our temperatures at all, and we are going to be seeing those warm temperatures, especially during the weekend, which is my favorite part of this whole 6-day forecast. Back to you.
Thanks, Mariana. BBC World News is next, and the PBS NewsHour is coming up at 7.
But your Florida news is always on at WUFT.org. Have a good night.